Welcome to 4.0 to Pro, the pickleball podcast that focuses on a single shot, tip, or strategy to improve your pickleball game with every single pocket-sized episode. Our goal is to make you better on the court every time you hear our voices.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 4.0 to Pro, your pocket-sized pickleball podcast, where we teach you a single shot or strategy every single episode. I'm Michael O'Neill here in not-so-sunny Long Beach, California, joined by Mircea Murariu there in Aspen, Colorado. Hello,
How are you doing, my
sir?
friend? It's not so sunny right now since it's dark, but it was a beautiful day in Aspen, and it's a joy to be here. But it's good to see your smiling face, my friend. We got the new video option, which is nice. I like it.
Yes, we get to see each other, and you guys, if you haven't checked in, well, these shows are going up on YouTube as well, and I'm sure you'll be seeing clips on the socials as well, so you can see our shining faces. Mircea,
What?
Guess what? I have a rather poignant and gigantic announcement to inform you about. Would you like to hear the huge
I am
surprise?
waiting with bated breath. Tell me.
Right now, this show you're doing with your little fat head just surpassed 1 million downloads since we started the show.
That's
1 million.
That's
What do you think about
unbelievable.
that?
I mean, that's just incredibly humbling, I have to say. So just can't thank everyone out there enough. Can't thank you. You know, you've obviously been the engine behind this thing, and all the work you do in the background is really unknown by the majority of the people except myself.
Especially now we have video.
I know,
Holy moly.
I know, it's yeoman's work,
Anyway.
and you never complain about it, and it's incredible. And so thank you. Thank everyone for listening. Thank you to everyone that, says hello to us, gives us a, hey, we listen to the podcast, just want to say hello. Very humbling. We're just very, very grateful to everyone. So thank you so much. Amazing news. That's just incredible. I'm blown away.
It's crazy. Well, so just for you guys, and you might not know this because you're not professional podcasters. I've been professionally podcasting now since 2012. So whatever that is, 13 years or so. Most podcasts, like in the high 90s, 99 or 98%, never make it past episode 7. So episode 7 is the kind of litmus test. The second part of it is the median number of downloads for a show. Could you make an educated guess or an uneducated guess of how many downloads that is, like per episode? How many downloads per show that is the average
I
right
have
now?
no idea. Let's say 1,000.
Wouldn't that be great? It's 35. 35 downloads per episode is the median number of downloads. So, and the reason why is because it's not very difficult to start a podcast. So, consequently, a lot of people start a podcast and then they start realizing, oh, wait a second, this is actually professional broadcasting. You have to be somewhat entertaining and know what you're doing to make it a successful show, and thus the numbers shrink substantially. So thankfully, this idea that I happen to have had literally on a court in Huntington Beach, I was driving down to play, and I go, oh, what's going on in the pickleball podcast world? And it was like after the third show, I was like, I don't care that you're eating turkey for dinner tonight. I don't even know who you are. Like, it just didn't matter to me. And I thought, would it be cool if we could just get in and out of a show? Like, let's just get to the thing. And I thought it'd be kind of fun if I could figure out a way to make people a better pickleball player between the time that they leave their house to the time they get on the pickleball court, which is why up until this point, Mircea, we've resisted doing video because this has always been meant to be an audio experience so people can learn while they're in their car. And if you're watching this thing while you're in your car, stop watching this thing while you're in your car. It's not just listen to the audio one. It's much better. Anyway, it has grown in a way that I couldn't have foreseen. I'm so grateful that you came and joined us last year and have brought your really unique form of looking at the game and wisdom. And as you alluded to, so many people stop and say, man, we listened to the show, or I got on the podium because of you guys, or you got a trophy, or whatever it is. I just had someone the other day where I was talking and someone looked at me really quick and she's like, are you Michael? And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, I love the podcast. And I wasn't even talking to her. I was talking to a group of other people. So that's just out there. And the gratitude, it is a huge honor for you guys to do that. So thank you.
Agree.
everyone.
Ditto.
Now, back to what we're supposed to be doing here, which is getting into the content.
Yes.
We're going to talk about coaching today, Mircea, because you and I had this wonderful camp down in Fort Lauderdale a couple months ago, and so I couldn't have had more fun. It's so much fun to stop, spend a couple of minutes with someone, and then literally physically see them become a better player. But not all coaches are created equal, and not all coaching chemistry is created equal.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's face it, it's a relationship. So if you are seeking a coach, and, to back up a little bit, you really have to think about what you want for yourself in terms of what you want out of pickleball. I'm assuming since you're listening to our podcast, you want to get better. Even if you can't quite get the pro in a realistic fashion, we all want to get better, do our best, compete, have fun. And along the lines of getting better, you have to decide that that's what you want to do. You want to dedicate yourself to intentionally doing things that get you to your goal. And your goal might be to be, 5'5". Your goal might be to, be 5'0", to get a medal, to get multiple medals, or just to be your best version of yourself that you can be on the pickleball court, and hopefully off of it, obviously, as well. Whatever you want to get to, you first have to define what you want out of the sport. What do you think it was for you, looking back on it, Michael, when you decided that you really want to maximize this? What do you think kind of led you to that decision?
Well, for me, it was very early. I was in my first month. I knew that I wanted to play pickleball. I'd come from tennis and then racquetball, and the pandemic was happening. And I instantly, as many of us do, fell in love with the game. And I said, I want to be really good at this. So I went to the guy who was the local coach. One thing that's probably worth noting is, A, not all coaches are created equal, but B, you don't have to go to the same coach for everything. There could be certain coaches that are better at a particular skill that you want to learn, and they maybe aren't as good at a certain skill that you want to learn, so you may have to find somebody else for that. But in this case, I wanted a guy to show me really the basic fundamentals. And one of the things that happened, which I think I was really appreciative of, I didn't particularly like him as a human, but he was the kind of coach that me being a kid from Philly really appreciated. He was like, get there. Like he was the guy, I wanted to be yelled at. I wanted someone to be really like I'm on the football field and need to get to a certain spot. Later on in my playing, career, if you will, I coached with another guy that was way too gentle for my personality type. Hey, on that thing, if you would just kind of shift your shoulders that way. And I'm like, bro, just say it. Let's go. I'm paying $100 an hour for this. Yep. Let's get to the point, kind of thing. And I have since heard similar feedback about that particular guy. So for me, it wasn't a good fit, but for others, it could be a fabulous fit. He's an unbelievably great player, but it just wasn't the right fit for me from a coaching standpoint. So I think for me, I knew out of the gates that if I want to accelerate in pickleball, I want to know at least the correct fundamental way to do a particular shot or the group of shots, since I was like in my first month. And then 2, give me something that I know that I can work on and not be like fundamentally wrong with how I'm swinging the paddle or something like that.
Right. And I think one of the things that you mentioned that's really important is to figure out what types of skills that you want to learn and that you may not have the same coach be able to hit all those notes the same. If you're a beginner, there are people that are much better at coaching beginners. And then when you're a higher level player, there are coaches that are better at coaching higher level players. And it might be strategy, it might be technique. Hopefully it's a combination of the two. One of the ways that I would really start off if I was, starting from scratch and looking for a coach for myself, if I had just entered the game at, roughly a, 4 or 5 level, I would say I would sit down and along the lines of our last podcast where we discussed what you want to communicate with your partner in terms of your strengths, weaknesses, wants, and needs, I would do the same with respect to a coach. So I would list those things that you're good at, things that you're not so good at, and what you want to get out of the coaching. That way you have a clear directive. So both for yourself and any potential coaches, you can articulate your thoughts and your wants and needs, and that's a good blueprint that you can use to go forward.
Did you decide when you were just coming into pickleball, did you have any sort of coaching, or was it because the Boca area was so chock full of pros that you just started playing with them and picked up
It was
things?
definitely the latter. And it was an odd time because you have to remember that I started basically, I think it was around September of 2019, right before everything blew up. So it was 2020 where you had the APP and PPA. The pro tour or the pro scene, I would say, was far, far less limited when I started. You know, there was nationals, there was the Tournament of Champions, there was a smattering of quote pro tournaments here and there. It was really more money balls than anything else in local areas. But it really blew up right when I started playing, and I was obviously fortunate enough to meet people like, you know, Julie Johnson, JW, like the first day I started playing, then we were playing with other people, you know, pretty soon afterward. It was Gabe Tardio, Anna Bright, James Ignatowicz, Millie Rain, you know, all these people that we were playing with. Yeah.
Who's who?
It was really, you know, it was just happenstance that I lived in that particular area and I happened to meet those particular people, and we all started growing at once, and we kind of collectively were coaching each other. It was just kind of like de facto coaching. It was like accidental.
I was just going to ask you that. I'm curious about the culture amongst touring pros or people that are really taking it seriously. I'm sure they're actively always working on their own game, but do they keep an eye out on each other for certain things? Will they mention something if they see it? Or is it more like the NFL, which is, if you want to ask me about something, I'll give you feedback?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a mixture, and it depends on the personality. It depends on the relationship and the personality. So I'd say some pros just go out and play and they just practice with each other and don't really give each other feedback. Most often, if you're drilling with one player or maybe 1-on-2, then you're more likely to give each other feedback and help each other out. Now it's grown so much that there are so many opportunities in terms of access to pro level play in the South Florida area that it's just a completely different ballgame when we started. There's the exponential growth of both the pro game and just pickleball in general has completely changed the landscape. Back to our original topic, the first step beyond deciding that you want some help and you want to get better, the next step is to decide what you feel you need and what you would like out of a coach. And then there is geography and reality in terms of both your budget and what's around you. Now, fortunately, there is a lot of online coaching, but that also often requires a cost. So these are things you have to factor in when you decide to look for a coach.
Yeah, and it depends on how you learn. I was also going to mention that there are tons of higher level, really any level, online coaching where you can record a video of yourself.
Yes.
And we do that ourselves, where people can send a video and we can review it, and there's a fee associated with it. That's a really good way to do it. It depends on how you learn. If you need to be having reps where you've got a coach feeding you a certain ball, that's one thing. And maybe there's a bit of a timeline on this, Mircea. I mentioned when I first started, I just wanted somebody to show me, like, let's make sure that I'm not doing fundamental things wrong, where I've got an elbow going the wrong way or my wrist isn't doing it or whatever it is. Like, I wanted to get the shots down. I knew that I had literally hundreds of hours of practice to do to get the shots down, but I just didn't want to go down the path in the wrong way. So if you're in that like 3.0 to 4.0 range, I love group coaching programs for that particular level. I love when you can get into a group, you guys can work on some very fundamental shots where there's a line and you can all be doing drops and all dinks and whatever. I love that. And I think the best way to find those is to go to most of the local places. If there's country clubs, if there's rec courts, things like that, and just ask around who's coaching. And I think the part B to that same thing is when you get that little list together, and you probably could chat GPT it, to be honest, but if you get that list together, it's always cool to ask the coach, hey, would you mind referring me to a couple people that you've taught? And maybe you can get in touch with them and say, what's their coaching style like? Have you felt like you've learned something, XYZ? Because you may not be compatible with whatever their coaching style is, like I mentioned earlier. So it's nice to vet the coach a little bit and make sure that A, they have the personality you like, and B, they're in the sector that you're in. And I think that as you move down that timeline, you tend to get more specific about the things you want coached.
AI is moving fast. So fast, it's hard to keep up. In fact, in ServiceNow's latest AI Maturity Index, scores dipped 20% from last year. But that's okay, because AI isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. You may be behind today, but tomorrow you could be a pace setter. Dive into ServiceNow's AI Maturity Index and see how you can innovate as fast as your ambitions. Visit servicenow.com/AI maturity.
Yeah, well, especially the word of mouth and getting a quality recommendation for someone you trust is huge. I would echo what you just said about asking multiple people, because there is one coach that someone may not have had a good experience with that might be perfect for you. If you ask 6 people and like 5 people are like, oh, that person's amazing, and one person says, oh, they're terrible, that can give you a little bit of an idea, because at times it's a relationship and someone might be a great coach for you, but they're just not a good coach for someone else. I think that that's something you also have to keep in mind.
Yeah, I agree. If you guys have ever gone to a coach before and you just get there and they just do their program, they just coach you the way they coach people versus what are we working on today? Is it this all around game and I'm going to just teach you how I teach everybody? Or are we going to work on something very specific that you feel like is a weakness in your game? And maybe that happens a little bit as you're closer to that 3-5, 4-0 range versus the 5-0 and above range. Because I think we get pretty specific about things that we want to shore up, I think, as you get closer to that 5-0.
Yeah. And what happens is, at least from my perspective, when I go out and meet a new player that wants to get some coaching, I'll ask them some things about themselves. And then I ask them, do you want me to evaluate you and tell you what I think? Would you like to have certain things that you want to work on? And, everyone has a little bit of a different approach, and mine is very individualized. Obviously, you can't do that in a group/camp setting as much as you would like. But for me, the most important thing is to make players the best versions of themselves. I don't want to turn them into someone else. I might use examples of a player that has a particular shot that fits their game style. But what I don't want to do is tell people, yeah, I'm going to make you into Ben Johns, because I don't feel that that's realistic in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not even talking about, achieving that level. What I'm talking about is just turning a player into someone that they're just not. So for me, if I were looking for a coach, that would be an important aspect.
100%. Not only factoring all that in, I think maybe the difference is for you that if somebody gives you, I was actually talking about you the other day. I said, yeah, Mircea doesn't really have a TUI. And I don't think I'm talking out of class on this. You don't have a two-handed backhand roll or otherwise. I said it's ironically one of the only things that I could teach him well. But I guarantee you that if you and I got on a court and we worked on it it takes usually 45 minutes to an hour to get like the bones of it, that when you're home or anywhere, that you're going to be cranking on it. You're going to keep working on it until it starts showing up in your game, because that's just who you are as an athlete. And I think that is really important to think about. If you guys have, let's say, 4 days a week that you're able to play pickleball, but you're like, I really want to get better at pickleball. Well, some of that time can't just be rec play. You have to allocate time to actually practice whatever it is that the coach is helping you with. You got to drill it. You got to work on it. So is it I need a 1-hour lesson, let me take some notes, and then I'm going to not do much until the next time I have a lesson? Or is it going to be, let me continue to get reps on this particular thing until, all right, I've done it for about 3 weeks, I'm going to get another lesson now, and like, how am I doing so far? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great point, because you are the one that needs to do the work. Your coach can help you and guide you. Your coach can't make you better without your help. You are the one that needs to do the work. And along the lines of drilling, people always talk about, hey, you got to drill to get better. Well, you have to drill properly to get better. I can't tell you how often I see people drilling incorrect technique that they can get the hang of while they're doing the drill or towards the end of the drill, where they're hitting balls generally where they want them to go. Then in a game, it completely breaks down. I literally saw an instructor, someone that was teaching pickleball, drilling incorrect technique over and over and over again. And then that particular instructor came out to a rec game and their game completely broke down with one particular aspect, which was the forehand dink. And the important thing is to get the process correct, not just hitting the ball over and over and over again. You really need to get the process on your side of the net. And what I mean by that is, that when I'm coaching, I focus on what people look like and what they're doing in terms of their stability, how they're making contact. I'm not so worried about where they're hitting the ball. So I'm not worried where they're hitting the ball on my side of the net. Obviously, if they're not making contact, but, they're just shanking balls all over the place, that's something we need to correct. But let's say we set up a target on my side of the net and they're missing that target. Like, that's not so important to me. What's more important to me is that they're hitting the ball in the correct fashion, making good contact, comfortable, stable, still, consistent, reproducible technique. Those are the things that I'm looking at, because if they take care of their things on their side of the net, or I help them do that, the stuff on my side of the net, meaning when they hit the ball where they're going to the target, that's going to come. You're going to be able to hit that target eventually. It's just going to take some time.
I drilled this week with someone who needed refinement on their two-way. They came from tennis, so the backswing was very flat and it was horizontal, which is what we would do in tennis. And then as you make contact with the ball, you'd brush up on it and get that topspin you're looking for. Well, we know in pickleball that doesn't work, and you've got to get the tip of the paddle down towards the ground to get that topspin that you're really looking for, especially with a ground stroke. She wasn't getting the shape she wanted, so we went through it, and I helped her with the actual physicality of swinging the way it needed to. And exactly to your point, I said before she even starts with this basket of balls, I go, you're going to hit 70% of these balls into the bottom of the net. Your paddle face is going to be so closed compared to what you're used to. You're just going to drill them down. And she did. It was just down, 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 down. But every once in a while, she got it. And she had a beautiful arcing topspin ball that dropped right where it was supposed to. So it was just this like nugget of, oh, that's it. But it's just going to take 300 reps before you start getting a little bit more comfortable with it. The outcome shouldn't be the biggest deal at the beginning. It's more about getting the steps right. As you said, it's so important to actually get the physicality of the shots correct. And then eventually you'll figure out the nuance of getting it over the net and then where to put it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we call that embrace the suck, because whenever you change your technique, or maybe if you're coaching and you're trying to help someone else change their technique for the better, there is going to be that learning curve, and they often get a little bit worse before they get better. And that's an expectation that you should have going into being coached. I mean, people really have to ask themselves, are they open to being coached? Because I've had sessions where people come out and they're like, oh, coach me, and I will suggest some things, and they're just not open to it. So you really have to yourself be open to it, number one. And then when you are interviewing coaches, maybe you call them up and say, hey, I got your name for someone who really heard good things. I was hoping we could set up a session, but I wanted to kind of just briefly ask you a few things about the coaching style, how long the sessions are going to be, what kind of things you need from me. Because as a coach, you have some expectation that in order for you to be effective, whoever you're coaching needs to implement those things, or at least try to implement those things during their off time, because 1 hour once a week is not going to make you better. It's the 1 hour teaching you a proper technique or proper drill, or maybe improve your strategy, footwork, core positioning, and you put those things into practice when you're not with your coach, especially if you don't have your coach there every single day.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I was looking down here. So I have an Apple Note. This is the second show in a row that I'm recommending you guys keep notes on something. But I'm scrolling right now my Apple Notes and showing it to Mircea. These are all coaching sessions and practice sessions that I make notes on either during or after the session, so I can keep an idea of what I was working on and what was working. Because very often we'll continue to try to improve something and we kind of forget what we were doing. Like, what was it that was so good? Why was this shot so good this day? Well, just jot it down. So I have this note that before I play or before I go to another coaching session, that I'll just review my notes from the last time and go, okay, here's what we worked on. And I can do that pretty often. In my last coaching session, I worked on my forehand drive and my backhand counter. And if I find that either of those two things isn't where I want it, I can go back to these notes and go, oh, I'm not doing the thing that we talked about in that particular session. So I think it's really worthy, not only to make notes, but also to stick your phone on a tripod and record your coaching session.
Absolutely. And one of the things you can also do is include that as part of your coaching. For example, if you have a coaching session and then you go out and drill, perhaps you video your drill session, and next time you meet up with your coach, say, hey, can you just take a look at this? And you can spend a few minutes looking at it, see if you're implementing the things that you've discussed correctly, and that coach can help you drill properly.
Yeah, more data is better typically for a coach. We like to see it. So I'm curious about your process, Mircea. Let's say that someone listens to this show. They're somewhere between a 4.0 and a 4.5, let's say. And they say, I want to come to Aspen and train with you. Or they say, come to Long Beach and train with me, whatever. What's the first thing you do as a coach to get an overall evaluation of what their game looks like, assuming they don't walk in with, can you help me fix XYZ?
So what I typically do is I go out, and unless they have a specific skill that they want to work on, I just evaluate the game by warming up with dinking, and then we do some transition zone work and obviously some more from the backcourt. So I try to see what aspects of their game are they least comfortable with, because if they already have strengths, I don't really enhance their strengths at the very beginning. I want to give them the most value, and the most value would be working on the things that they're least comfortable doing. And it's most often the transition zone and dinking. So those are typically the things that we work on. And I individualize it to, again, tell everyone that I want them to be a better version of themselves rather than turn them into someone else.
Well, we mentioned earlier that very often when you're just starting, in fact, here in California, I'm around Long Beach, there's at least 3 or 4 places during the course of the week that you can go for free and just jump on the court with a bunch of beginners, and there's a coach there that are teaching. It's really great. Like if you haven't, it's like an intro to pickleball, and you can run around and have a great time. And that's a group setting. And I think the further you go kind of up the duper timeline, if you will, the narrower the coaching situations get. And you end up very often with a one-on-one individual coaching session for a number of reasons, whether it's strategic or whatever. But one thing we haven't mentioned yet, which I think is super fun for the coach, I know you and I love it, and it's really, really good to practice, is 3-and-me. So it's you and 2 of your friends, and you go and have an hour session with the coach, and you guys will be actually playing points. And when the point ends, the coach will say something like, okay, freeze. And they'll ask the person, what made you hit that particular shot? What were you going for? And or the reason why this didn't work is because this person needed to fill in that gap and you left an open space or blah, blah, blah. But it's this lovely, like in situ, real world coaching with actual points. And it's super fun to me for the coach, and it's super fun for the participant.
Yeah, that's a great way to try out a coach. Another way is to do a group lesson or a camp. A local camp would be great, but if you want to travel somewhere, that way you get exposed with some buffers, if you will, to different coaches and different coaching styles, and you can see if you like aspects of a particular coach, that it's something that you want to have someone coach you in that fashion consistently. And you can ask them questions. Even if you have a coach already regularly, I really highly recommend that you give them feedback, tell them things that you like, things you might not be crazy about, because that helps them tailor their coaching style and the coaching sessions to you individually, other than just saying, oh yeah, okay, I got it, or just nodding your head and trying your best to do whatever they say. One of the things that I feel is really important when I coach, and I probably talk too much, as we all know I already do, but I want to make people understand what the thought process is behind a particular shot or behind a particular coaching suggestion, because if I just say do this, I don't feel that will really sink in, and that will be a really effective way for them to learn. And maybe that's just my own bias, that I just don't learn very well if someone just says do this, and if I don't know why. It really helps me to understand why, and I'm able to implement that effectively.
It really matters to have the context around the point, but it's part of the interview process. And like you said, you might go to a couple sessions with someone and go, maybe not for me, and find somebody else in your town. But I do think the acceleration of your pickleball game is very, very in line with how much coaching you get and certainly how much drilling you're able to give yourself versus playing. I know a lot of people don't love that part, but I'll tell you what, you'll love when the shot starts showing up in your game and your friend's going, where did that come from? Then that's this lovely positive reinforcement that some of the time you spent putting in the work is, paying some dividends on the court.
One thing you also have to keep in mind is that you're probably not going to get immediate gratification. You might. There are certain times that I have a coaching session where they are dramatically better at the end of the session. But there are times when like we mentioned before, that there's a little bit of a downward dip because they're making a big change in a particular flawed technique. And the only way to do that is to unravel the faulty technique and implement the new one. And there's a learning curve. So keep that in mind, depending on the skill that you're working on, that it may take some time, either a few sessions or a few weeks. And again, you really have to do that work on your own when you're not with a coach in order to solidify whatever concept or technique that you are trying to learn.
I agree. In fact, the woman I was teaching the TUI the other day had a great question. She said, how long until you learned it, or how long until it, And I said, well, it's about 3 months until it started showing up in my game. I started working at the beginning of 2023. I really worked it. I would go to the local, racquetball courts and just hit backhand TUIs until I was blue in the face. I did that multiple times. Then I remember being in games and going, oh, I just hit a TUI. Like it was a thing. It showed up in the game. And I was like, you see that, dude? I totally hit, And then it changed a little. And then it was like, oh, man, this is turning into a bit of a weapon for me. Like I got a nice roll out of it. I've got some speed ups off the bounce. Like there's things that your game just gets better when you actually work on a thing until it's very competent. So to your point, you got to embrace the suck. It's going to take a few months to show up in your game. It's not going to happen right away.
Yeah. Particularly if you've had some bad habits that you've, started off with, or you've drilled inappropriately, or it's just part of how you've been taught, maybe incorrectly. It's just not as effective as it should be for your own game style. So it's going to take some time.
So guys, if you are in that position where you need a coach, don't be afraid. There's plenty of great coaches out there in the world. Mircea and I have been chatting, and we would love to do another camp or two before the end of the year. Right now,
Absolutely.
It looks like Texas. Looks like Texas could be a great spot. So if you'd like to get on the list for Texas, we don't know where or when yet, but if you want to just be notified when we lock down a venue, write me at picklehelp.com, and just give me your name and let me know that you are interested in the camp. I will put you on the list. We went through the entire list last time, so don't be afraid to do that. I will absolutely include you. We're going to take 4 VIPs and 20 regular campers, most likely. Again, just get on the list, and I guess we're both open to doing some video stuff too. So you can always write both of us, and we'll figure something
Absolutely.
out. But dude, 1 million downloads. Congratulations. High five.
High five,
virtual.
my brother.
For everyone actually watching this on YouTube, if you're still here, you are something else. And guys, thank you so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to 4.0 to Pro. For more tips, find us on Instagram at 4.0 to Pro. If you have a pickleball question, submit it at picklehelp.com. Now, get out there and dominate. But don't forget to have fun.